when I open it. Thank you. Like I say, we had 51 people register, and as of now, we're only up to barely 30, so lots more coming in.
Yeah, and it's before 1.
Right.
So
Right.
I guess we're all,
But you all have so much to say and so many questions. I want to give you the benefit of everything that's in there. But I do like to start on time, and so as the clock ticks over to 1 p.m., I will start. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mary Jo Deering, and the head of WAVE, and I'm very pleased to have you here at this session of ours, one of what we call our mutual support sessions. As I've said before to those on the Zoom call here, why you all are here to help share your solutions as well as your problems. And knowing that this is going to be a very popular topic, why we are recording it. So I want you to know that it is being recorded here. So we're very happy to have our co-facilitators who have a lot of experience in not only recruiting and training volunteers, but working through evolutionary stages in working and recruiting volunteers. We have Noel Derman, who is the volunteer coordinator at Arlington Neighborhood Village. And we have Bill Emmett, who is the president of the board of directors and leads the Mount Pleasant Village in DC. And they will each say a few words to help give you some context, sharing a few of their experiences. But after that, they are simply going to call on you, and not call on you. I'll try and help Bill and Noel, but you two should feel free to go ahead and call on people as you wish. So if there are no other questions about logistics, then I'm going to turn it over to Bill and Noel. And I don't know if you two have talked about who's going to go first.
Of course not. No.
Okay.
So, but Noel, I'm quite happy to let you go first if you'd like.
Oh, sure. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mary Jo. My name is Noel Derman, and I work as the volunteer coordinator for Arlington Neighborhood Village. I've been with Arlington Neighborhood Village for, I think, about 4 years. I started as a volunteer. I also do some grant writing. And then about a year, maybe 2 years ago now, I started in a volunteer coordinator role. So I am super part-time on this. I do about 10 hours a week, and I'm helped along by our volunteer committee. So at Arlington Neighborhood Village, we've been in operations since 2014. And as of now, we have 383 volunteers and 349 members. So we are doing well with the volunteer recruitment and training process. We do have challenges, which we'll get into, I'm sure. And I'd love to hear you all's thoughts on some of those in a bit later. But not even recently, about 2 years ago, we redesigned our volunteer recruitment and training process to streamline it a bit. The way we were doing it before, we had like some pain points in there that really slowed down the whole process. And we realized it was taking us a long time to get someone who was interested in being a volunteer through the process of training, vetting, onboarding, and getting them started. So we looked at our process and we saw that there were some points that we really needed to work on. So in our original volunteer recruitment training process, when someone was interested in working with A&V, they would send us a little interest form with just their basic information on it. Then we would have a volunteer contact them to set up a time to chat on the phone to get more information for them. And then we would work with volunteers to set up a time that they could come in for an in-person training. And we would try to wait for, there to be at least 3 volunteers that could do the training session. So the parts that were really holding us up were those scheduling stuff. So scheduling the phone calls, scheduling the trainings. It was just a lot, taking a ton of time. So what we ended up doing, and what we're still doing now, is we cut some of those pieces out. So we now have a volunteer application on our website that gets all of that information that used to come from the phone call. When someone is interested in being a volunteer, we send them an email with a quick overview of our volunteer program and some key points. and the link to the application. They fill out the application and they get on a list for training. To alleviate the scheduling of training pain point, we now have 2 set trainings per month, and people can come to one, they can come to the other, or they can wait for the next month. So we're not working with a bunch of people's schedules. We just have, those are the trainings we have, and people come to them or they don't. So that really streamlined the process. So now it is just, they fill out the application form, they come to the training. The training have been online over Zoom, obviously, during COVID, and that has also necessitated really shortening the training. They come to the training, they're vetted, and then they're onboarded. So the process can be pretty quick. Someone can be on board in a week if the timing works out with the training and everything. So that has been worked out really well. During the pandemic, we have brought on an additional 143
I'm
volunteers.
gonna go to the bathroom and listen from there. I can't do
We've
that.
been really lucky
I'll be very honest.
and very fortunate for people really wanting to reach out to help their neighbors through such a tough time. On the recruitment side of things, we mainly get people finding us through Google searches. So they're looking for volunteer opportunities in Arlington, volunteer opportunities for seniors. They find us listed on Volunteer Match and Volunteer Arlington. We get the majority of our applications through those 2 sites. We also love to get volunteers. We love to have our current volunteers refer their friends. We find those links, the personal referrals, to be very strong and to result in really good, dedicated volunteers. It's also great to be able to recruit for volunteers in person. So during non-COVID times, we always make sure we have a presence at county events, at the fair, at farmers markets, those types of things. We also post on Nextdoor, and we ask our volunteers to post on their neighborhood listservs every once in a while. So we have a nice mix of online recruitment and like person-to-person recruitment, and that has been working out really well for us. So that is the quick overview. I hope I didn't talk too fast. I do want to mention, we have been really lucky with we do have good numbers for our volunteers, but we do still have challenges. We have challenges of bringing people on board and then they kind of disappear. We have challenges of getting people to the training process and then they realize that they're not the right fit for us. So we're really working on really clarifying upfront what exactly we're looking for in volunteers. But we really need to work on that engagement piece, keeping people engaged and making them volunteer. Our volunteer program is super flexible, which is amazing for people, but it also can maybe seem a little too flexible. People find it very easy to just kind of drop out. The other thing, which I know a lot of people have challenges with, is finding drivers. Monday through Friday, available during business hours, drivers. So I'm really interested in hearing what you all are doing. And as I was telling Mary Jo, it might be a separate conversation we have around engagement. But I'm happy to be here and hear what you all have to share. Thanks.
Great. Excuse me. So I am Bill Emmett. I'm as Mary Jo said, I'm the president of Mount Pleasant Village in Washington, D.C. And we are one of 3 all-volunteer villages in the district. And I'm happy to see that the other 2 are also represented today, East Rock Creek Village and Glover Park Village, and as well as some of the other DC villages. Well, first of all, Mount Pleasant Village has about 210 members, and we are in a place where we are really just reconstituting our volunteer program. It was not doing very well before COVID. COVID really, threw all the apples into the air, and we're collecting them now. And we think we'll be in a much better place than we were before COVID with our new volunteer program. And I'll describe that in a second. But I wanted to mention that the DC Villages Online all know that we this year did a survey of all the DC villages. And we found that across DC, 24% of the respondents to the survey said that what they liked about the village. One thing they liked about the village was that it provided an opportunity to serve. In Mount Pleasant, 30% said that the village was important to them because it provided an opportunity to serve others. That was during COVID. Post-COVID, 29% of our members anticipate taking part in volunteer activities, and 22% across the district said they wanted to take part in post-COVID volunteer activities. Now, this may or may not seem like a high number to you, but what's really important to me, what really stood out, is that that's a far greater number than the number of people who said that they wanted to get services from the villages, both across DC and in Mount Pleasant. Those, the people who anticipated receiving services were in many cases in the single digits. So there's off the bat kind of an imbalance there among our members in terms of what they're looking for. During COVID, we did all of a sudden find ourselves the beneficiaries of a couple of hundred neighborhood volunteers who had no previous affiliation with the village, who wanted to help the seniors who they assumed would be more vulnerable during COVID. Of course, it didn't really work out that way. And to Noel's point about engagement, we had a lot of volunteers who really had nothing to do. And that was that same phenomenon was the downfall of our previous volunteer program in Mount Pleasant Village that we called at that point Helping Hands. We had a number of volunteers who frankly became disenchanted as time went on because they weren't getting any calls for services from village members. So we've had to rethink how we're going to approach that and really work hard on the idea of engagement and keeping the volunteers happy, because we realize that once we lose the volunteers as happy participants, it's going to be that much harder to recruit volunteers. So that's really one of our main challenges. Just I was in a weird way happy to hear Noel say that engagement piece is a big challenge as well in her village. So we're approaching our new volunteer program, which we are calling Neighbors Helping Neighbors, as very much about serving the needs of the volunteers as much as it is serving the needs of the people who may want services. Because as I said, our village members have not indicated, or not a high number of village members have indicated that they want services. So that's something we have to sort of figure out down the road, how to keep that in balance. And maybe that's by not taking on as many volunteers at any one time as want to be volunteers. Maybe it's by keeping the pool a little bit small so that they're engaged. We're going to be working that out. But the other side of that is to create demand as best we can and really get the word out that these services are available and the village is providing services. We're not only providing services to our members, but during the pandemic, we discovered that there's a high need for services among people who aren't necessarily members now, but who live in our neighborhood. And so we're trying to match our own willing village volunteers with other services that can be provided to serve others in the neighborhood as more of a community service. So that's something that's just catching on now, and I'll have more to report on that in 6 or 12 months. Training, the only thing I'll say about training is that we've taken our own manual, which was really good. We've cadged stuff from many of you, I'm sure, and created a new manual that I think is very comprehensive. The training practice that we're doing, of course, it's online. We are recording it, and we think that as we bring on more volunteers in the future, we won't necessarily have to have them all participate in a live training session. If we record it ask them to sit through the hour-long training session, if it is that long, and then answer a few questions afterwards. That will show us that they have been through the training. That's something we did with our pandemic neighborhood-wide Neighbors Helping Neighbors program, and it seemed to be effective. So we're going to try that for the village. So I think I'll leave it there, and hopefully between us, Noelle and I have given you some food for thought and some provoke some questions in your minds. So I don't know, Mary Jo, I look to you, but we'll see who wants to step forward with
Yes.
questions or thoughts.
I'm sure some of you at least have problems that you want to share, because that's why you're here. So if any of you have a particular problem that you didn't hear mentioned by Bill or Noelle, please share. You can raise your hand if you go down to the reactions. I think that's where you, on the bottom of your box, that's where you get it. Or you can literally, you can get our attention that way. So, okay, now, do I see Francis raising a hand?
Bonnie Swerdlow, I see.
Fine.
Okay.
We also have a problem with keeping our volunteers engaged because we have more volunteers than members. So it's kind of hard to, give everybody a job to do. But I don't have any idea. Does anybody have any ideas on how to keep the volunteers engaged?
And your volunteers are community volunteers in the way that Noelle was describing? So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe one thing to try is an activity that involves groups of volunteers. So we did something that I called Garden Palooza in the spring, which was telling all our members, hey, it's time to, clean up your gardens. Do you need help with that? Let us know and we'll send out teams of volunteers. And so then rather than it being, one request and one volunteer that takes the request, you're just encouraging big groups of people and you can send them out in teams.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
It's not an ongoing thing. It's still just sort of a one-off, but it can help get those folks that aren't taking the individual requests.
Yeah,
That's right.
it's a good idea. Yeah,
So-
thank you.
Shelley Moskowitz, I see that you have your hand raised.
Yes, and I will go off mute. Hi, everyone. First off, Bill, it's good to hear that you've made such great progress on all that you're doing. I wanted to show you that one of the ways we try to keep our volunteers active is to let them know they're loved. And this is the T-shirt we just created that we did, and it says Neighbors Helping Neighbors.
Uh-huh.
And it's our logo. And we had one of our few in-person but outdoor a barbecue volunteer appreciation gathering and gave personal thanks for the thing. It was really looking at the volunteers during the pandemic because it was sort of above and beyond the call of duty, and it was both direct service and behind the scenes. So a lot of times people who work behind the scenes are so fundamental that people don't even see them. And as Bill said, we're a volunteer-led managed village. So people have really been giving heart and soul for a long time. And so we did, acknowledging the personal, personally thanking each person for the types of things they did, giving them a T-shirt. And I did a little word cloud of things that came out of the village survey, some of the appreciations that came out of that, and I turned it into a word cloud, and we shared that. And then we picked 3 volunteers who had kind of even gone beyond the call of duty, and we gave them special gifts and acknowledgements at that event. So that's one thing. People love it. We miss seeing each other. For us, I'd say, to the question, we're having trouble finding people who are available to drive work days. And so we're just being more explicit about it. we've created a paid ad for the Shepherd Park Citizens Association, which is a quarterly newsletter that goes to about 2,200 households in our neighborhood. And usually we're a little oblique. We say, oh, we need volunteer drivers. And this time we just said, we need drivers who can drive weekday driving. And so I'll keep you posted. It'll go out December and we'll see if being as explicit makes the difference. But I think that's our experiment right now. And we're doing trainings as we have people. One of the big stumbling blocks has been doing the vetting, meaning running things through IntelliCore is the group that we have a contract with. And just admittedly, we were rusty at it because we didn't need to do much during the pandemic. It actually caused us to be paused and we had to re-up into it at a time when we had all these pent up requests. So it's been a game of trying to get to a more stable place. And I'm hopeful that'll happen by the spring. You know, we'll have this down back to an art form, I hope. Anyway, thanks for letting me talk.
Thank you.
That's such a good point, Shelley, about appreciation. And I think we definitely missed having our volunteer appreciation brunches over the pandemic. Just last week, we had a quarterly volunteer only call because we are hearing from our volunteers that they want more opportunities just to talk to each other. So that was a good start. But the engagement problems we have is that we do have enough for our volunteers to do, but we find out of the 380 some volunteers we have, it's the same 150 that are doing everything. So we know that there are people out there who are signed up who just aren't doing stuff. And like you said, the drivers are a huge challenge. And we got really specific as well about what we need. It's on the website now, it's on the first form, like we need drivers Monday through Friday business hours. And I make sure that I tell them on the training. And that's pretty much for all of our services. Like if you don't have availability during Monday through Friday during the work week, you're probably not going to see a lot of requests. And if you don't have that availability, please don't sign up to be a driver. So like you said, we had to get really clear about that. And that has been helpful. We've definitely had people drop off before going through the whole process. So that's good. So thank you for bringing up those points. Those are good ones.
Jane Wilbur, I see you've got.
Yeah, hi. I'm not the volunteer coordinator, but I know Francis is sort of between things. So I do know we have more members than volunteers. And this, all that's been mentioned is very similar for us in regards to the volunteers don't have a lot to do, but our members are not requesting services. And sometimes when we do get a ride request, we can't fill it, and that could be the issue of the Monday through Friday. But a couple of things, and I don't know how many of your villages participate with JCA, so this may only be particular to that. But if there's enough of you, we do partner with them.
What does that stand for?
The Jewish Council of Aging.
Oh, okay.
Use their scheduling service to schedule rides. So it's a way of sort of plugging it in, and it gets scheduled and emails go out, and you know, I'm the one that kind of does it. So it's like an all-in-one, just put it in and bing, it's nice, it tracks it, and then you have statistics. But we have this problem. It doesn't matter about the system, we have the problem. So that we can't get it. We have a few members that just can't get rides. I think it's the location, maybe a little, you know, I don't know, too far, too long of an appointment. But anyway, if you give them 48 hours notice, they can look at area villages who may have volunteer drivers that could fulfill it and would like to fulfill it. So we haven't used that yet, but that's we know we have access to that. And we also have, if we cannot find a driver that'll drive, it's the No Driver Share program, also coordinated through JCA, that they subsidize a ride 50%, and we are subsidizing the other half. the ride. So but it's with a commercial service. It's with an Uber or taxi or GoGo grandparent, and we have to set up an account, which we'll have that set up soon. But again, my one response I had from a member is like, I'm not comfortable using a commercial driver because we're all vaccinated and they know that, they feel safe. But I've been looking around at Uber, even for myself, and there's nowhere it says their drivers are mandated to be vaccinated. So for our older members, it may not work. So those are a couple of trying to get people to drive for our members. And then let me say, I had a few other things. And I guess
In which village is yours?
we're Greater Stonegate Village. So we're small. We have about 60 members and about 10 volunteers, rough numbers. But again, that non-activity of things, our members really miss the in-person social and so forth. We've done gift bags to recognize, we drop off, we talk to them at their door, both volunteers and members, to stay engaged. And I think when the weather gets better, we had a bingo thing at the pool, community pool during the summer, but with this weather, we can't do as many maybe outdoor gatherings to have these little appreciations or events. But a lot of what you guys have already said, we're not quite doing, and this may help us to streamline and put some more specific information out to our members and our community.
That's why we're doing the call, right, Mary Jo?
Right. And I one quick question: is this? I should have looked at more thoroughly. But in terms of the recruitment and volunteer training, is the recruitment that we're talking about specific for volunteers or recruitment in general?
It's volunteers, because we'll have another session at a later time about recruiting and maintaining members. I
Okay.
wanted to add something about the challenge that so many people find when there are more volunteers than requests. And when we started a small village in Bethesda and Maplewood, and we explicitly did not offer services. We started with the social side. And our volunteers were creating and hosting social events. So I think one of the things is that if you broaden your definition of what is a volunteer, what does a volunteer do? And it goes beyond services, the classic list of services. It goes into initiating a coffee hour. It goes into initiating a walking group. It goes into, helping to lead a theater group, one of these ongoing social events. And we do know that the social needs are just as important as the other types of service needs. And there are many volunteers who really like to do that social kind of thing, but they don't necessarily just want to go and check a box because I've done that task.
Mm-hmm. That's a great idea.
I'm just going by the hands raised by Zoom. So Abby Sims, you're muted.
Yeah, unmute. I'm just going to follow up on what Mary Jo said. I mean, we're in a situation where we don't get that many requests for rides, and actually the kind of volunteers that I would love to have, and we've had some success lately because we've had a number of in-person, very successful events, including in September, a concert with local musicians on the grounds of the local church that we partner with. And for Halloween, we ran 5 different Halloween parades and a Halloween block party. And I will just say what we all know, that you got to do the personal ask. And we've gotten 2 new board members as a result of me just going up to someone and saying, you've been interested in the past. I know you recently retired. Are you interested in joining the board? And the answers, fortunately for both, have been yes. But what we're all volunteer. And I'm really interested in less in in finding more drivers, although, because we don't get that many requests for rides, but in finding the volunteers, such as Mary Jo said, to take on responsibilities like programming, our monthly events on Zoom, really, responding to the membership applications that say, I want to volunteer on this committee, or I have an idea for an interest group. I'm the president and effectively often the person who has to follow up. So I'm definitely looking to delegate and to hopefully find people who will take on that responsibility without me getting involved. And that's kind of where we are. We're doing really well, even though we're still mostly on Zoom. And I'm just interested in people's ideas. And I do think the idea of appreciation, we had an appreciation brunch scheduled in March of 2020 that we ended up having to cancel, and have not held another one since. And I think it's important to reach out even to the people who are on our driving list who haven't been driving. Maybe they're no longer able to drive. I ran into one guy, we had an outside tour of the Audubon Naturalist Society. And for those of you who don't live in this neighborhood, they've done an amazing job of restoring the grounds, and it's very accessible now with a path as opposed to just a beaten down, ground path. And he can barely walk. And I said, are you still interested in driving? He said, I'm giving up my car. So, I think I need to, or we need to update our lists, because since the pandemic, lots of things have changed. But I'm always looking for ideas for how to recruit and engage, and not just for driving.
Mhm.
Bill and Noel, there are questions that are popping up in the chat too. And with your permission, maybe I'll at least read one here. It's from Elizabeth at Bethesda. It's about how do you handle the background check fees, since so many volunteers who sign up don't end up participating. She says that they ask volunteers to pay for the background check, although we offer to reimburse just as a screening tool. Still, many do not end up participating even after training and paying. So the question is about the cost of the background check and how you handle that.
Yeah, that is a challenge, and those fees can really add up. So we do ask that we do mention that our volunteers can cover all or part of their background check costs, and it comes up when they click the link to start the background check to give them that option. We found that just stating that a couple of times in a couple of different places has resulted in a lot more people opting to pay for their own background check. But again, just like you said, sometimes they go through, they pay for it, or they don't, or they still don't volunteer. So you still are paying for people who aren't showing up, and that stinks. I don't have a solution for you, but I think that having the background check be the last thing that happens before they join is also useful. I know that some villages have the background check up front, but I think that it's good to let people know as much as they can and get as much of a feel for the organization as possible before that final step, because we want to make sure like they know what we're doing, they know what they're going to be doing, and they want to do it. So I think putting it as the last step and giving people plenty of options to ask questions or to decide it's not for them also does help cull the numbers, because we have a fair amount of people who go through the whole training process and then don't do the background check. They drop off at that point. So there are ways to make it less likely that you'll be paying for a bunch of people who don't do anything, but I don't have a solution to solve that problem, because I think it's just always going to be a bit of a challenge. But it is a big one because those fees do add up. Anyone else have any suggestions on that?
Yeah, thank you. And this is Elizabeth Hale at Bethesda Metro Area Village who posted it, and I apologize, my video isn't working. And I'm curious, maybe just by raising hands, how many villages, so we flipped it around, like I said, as a screening tool and said that they had to pay. And we word it that we ask you to pay as a donation, but we're welcome to reimburse you. And sometimes people do ask for reimbursement, but I felt like that would cut out some people that weren't serious. So I'm curious if anybody else does that, or maybe we shouldn't be because that's too much of a turnoff. I don't know. Nobody else. Okay.
Good suggestions, though. Megan
Well, I was just
McIntyre.
going to say to that, oh yeah, I was going to comment about the background checks. We struggle with this as well. So right now, our organization at Home in Alexandria pays for the background checks. And so we see it sort of as a marketing tool to say at no cost to you. But even doing that, we still struggle. We have some people that do not want to share their social security number, or they just really feel uncomfortable about the background check. And so then we kind of run into a roadblock there because we can't go further if they're going to be with our organization if they don't participate in the background check. I don't know if we flipped it and we said or gave them the option to pay for it, whether it would increase people's commitment to it, but it seems like we try and get people by saying, we're just doing the background check, we're paying for it. So if you agree to it, that would be great. Then we can move forward. So we're always running into the problem that we might get someone to do a background check, but then they disappear, they never respond, or they don't really engage with us. So we are spending money on the background check or the effort to do all that, and then they don't actually become a volunteer. So I'd be interested to see other people's suggestions. I don't know what the right answer is. Maybe we should ask
Right.
people to pay for it. So
And could I ask that perhaps Bill and Noel and others, how much is a single background check, or do you sign a contract for X number in advance? Give us a few details about the
Sure.
costs of background checks.
For us, our general background check is usually around $35. With a driving record check for drivers, it's $55. If you have someone who's lived in a lot of places and needs a lot of different state background checks, they can get really expensive. So that's something to keep an eye out. But they're usually 25 to 55 or 35 to 55. So.
Well,
And
Elizabeth,
Megan, that's a really good point about the asking people to pay. It's a lot to think about, whether that's a motivator or if you want people to have some skin in the game. It could go a
Yeah.
lot of different ways. Sorry, go ahead, Bill.
no, I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt, but it's, it seems to me that it is really going to depend somewhat on the village to village. I think if you're talking about the numbers of volunteers you have, Noel, in the hundreds, that's a lot of money. There's no question of that. If it's a village that has a couple of dozen volunteers, then I think it's a reasonable cost of doing business to absorb it. At least that's how we've approached it so far. And I think the range is, Elizabeth put in the chat that her vendor charges 25 to 35, and that's more in line with the vendor we use too. So I don't know whether we could go on background checks, but there are other questions that are coming up. But I see here that kind of intrigues me is the volunteers is from Wendy, Arlington Neighborhood Village, saying some of our volunteers have told us that they want more training, how to engage with older adults, especially those with chronic conditions or cognitive issues. That's something that we've, in our reconstituted program, that's something we paid attention to. We've certainly included our social worker in the training, and we've done some I think some pretty intensive looking at when we're out of our depth, basically, when our volunteers, how can they know that they're exceeding their scope of practice, if you will. And I think that's a very important thing for volunteers to consider. So I don't know whether others of you have been looking at that set of issues.
At Capitol Hill Village, we're starting to put on our YouTube channel some volunteer training videos. So far, soon we'll be doing one for transportation, but so far, most of what we have is surrounded on Helpful Village, the software platform that we use. But I wonder if as a group, some of us villages should get together and have YouTube videos, which, ones that would be general between all of us. And it would be easy for volunteers to do that, on their own time or from their homes or that kind of thing. That might be an idea if rather than each of us trying to create the same thing on 50 different locations, we might want to band together.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure we could come up with a list of topics that would hit for a lot of villages, that's a really,
Yeah.
Well, it's good to
a
think
great
about
idea.
that because I'm sure some of you have, if not all of you, have used the joint platform for events where anyone can go and post information about an event. And so I think this suggestion, was that you, Noel, who gave it? I wasn't watching. Who was it who gave that?
It
That was
was,
Mary from
Yep.
Capitol
Mary,
Hill
oh,
Village.
Good, thank you. Oh, that's right, Capitol Hill, thank you. So anyway, I agree that that's a good thing to offer. And I think it's something that maybe WAVE should take under consideration. I know we have a YouTube channel. And I don't know much about it. Carolyn, if you're on it, maybe you can tell me whether I should stop talking immediately because it's out of the question we could ever do this. So Carolyn, do you have any thoughts? Just even hypothetically.
Yeah,
whether-
our YouTube channel would be able to host any videos that anybody has to offer. So that would be it's a ready-made vehicle. It already exists. So if there are videos that people want to share, we could post them now.
there would be the whole quality control aspect of it, making sure that the videos are promoting things that we collectively want to promote and, in good practices, not fringe ideas, but that's, it's a,
Well, maybe what I would suggest is that anyone who would like to pursue this as just a small group, please email me. I think you all have my email from the Zoom invite, mjd@mjdeering.net. And if there's any of us who want to talk a little bit more about that and smooth out some of the potential kinks in advance and stuff like that, well, it's certainly worth pursuing. And I think it was a great suggestion.
that's right. Okay, Shelley, I see your hand raised,
Yeah.
and Diane, then Diane Smith, who doesn't.
Yeah, I wanted to respond to some of the questions Abby raised, that after we thanked and fed our volunteers at the appreciation event, one of our volunteer leaders is a very skilled facilitator, and she had created a little questionnaire that she handed out, and it invited everyone to just sit quietly and think about new services that we might have volunteers provide and new programming or anything that they were excited to do, or anyone that they knew who might also want to be a volunteer. And so we had everybody in a really good headspace, and it was amazing how much feedback, really constructive information we got. And then we put the list of things that people had suggested into the newsletter so that we could see if others resonated to it. But truthfully, it's already helping us to put on the calendar. We're going to have another jazz event because we had a really successful one last March. There's things that are going on the calendar now that directly came from the little questionnaire. And also, we created a program during the pandemic called Armchair Travel because we were all so stuck at home. And what I do is we ask people, where have you traveled around the globe? Where do you have stories and photos? And then I help them to be able to put it into a PowerPoint and to present it as an armchair travel event. We've gone to the Galapagos and Egypt and China, Cambodia, South Africa, you name it. And quite a number of people were willing to be the volunteer leader with a little support. And you kind of are filling a slot. And then we broaden the definition of what armchair travel looks like and added other kinds of activities like the jazz club as another kind of thing. And also going to the Smithsonian American Art Museum that at the time it was closed. So it was armchair travel into a museum when we miss seeing and talking about art. And the last thing I just want to add, somebody else had asked, when we started to get all the pent up requests for all the doctor's appointments that had been put off, we really were in a squeeze for drivers. And so the volunteer committee went through the list and divvied it up, and they called everyone who had ever qualified to be a driver and cleared who wanted to still do it, who didn't. And then we had a better idea of how many more we needed to recruit and the kinds. So I feel like there's some pretty straightforward, simple steps, creating spaces for people to be able to help. I mean, it's a work in progress for all of us, I'm sure. But anyway, thanks.
Thank you, Shelley. Expanding the notion of what volunteers are. Really. Diane Lavoie, I think I see your hand raised, and so.
Thank you. I've gotten a lot of tips and ideas. I've also wanted to respond as our conversations, all the different topics seem to interrelate in some ways. We haven't in Cheverly Village, we're a very small village. We've been around for about 5 years, and we have about 60 members at present. Our volunteer background checks are not an issue. People are okay about that. People are okay about many things. I think partly because our training takes place in 3 sessions. We take training very seriously and always have. We've built on some training that other villages, I know we built in Palisades initially. Right now, our own training manual, we're pretty good about. But basically what we do is we have an orientation, which really helps people get in a mindset to realize what they might or might not be doing. I'm not sure it really works because I still, can be uncertain, but it helps for people to understand. And it really helps people to understand what kinds of teams they can belong to for things that have nothing to do with services, how they can help create events or how they can work in various other management teams. So that I think we have 3 sessions, as I said. One is an orientation, one is a very detailed 2.5-hour session that equips people to provide services to members. It really is all about safety, member safety. So we can be sure that our volunteers will not pick someone up off the ground if they didn't see them fall. They'll call 911. So there's some rules like that. And we also have a 3rd session, and I've been listening to see if any of you must be doing this, to help members learn how to use our website and how to post their request, how to respond to requests on the website. We use Helpful Village. And I think that's a very good platform, but it doesn't teach itself. You got to learn it. So those 3 sessions have helped to obviate some of the other problems. However, what I haven't heard, we haven't done any, we haven't asked members, volunteers for information about driving their driver's license. We don't keep that. Maybe we should we? And what about insurance? We have not been asking for that. Yes, they know they need to have it, but we haven't systematically been chasing down that information or updating it regularly. So, all of these questions kind of interrelate. Thank you.
Answers to that from anyone?
Yeah, Diane, I just to respond to the last 2 things, driver's license and insurance, the system the scheduling system, and I know if you don't, I guess, I don't know if your platform allows for this or your scheduling service, but ours does. There's an entry for licenses and insurance. And either, I get a notification, but also the driver can go in the system themselves and update. So the system is monitoring, and when somebody's license is out of date or insurance or whatever it is. And so that's built in.
Yes.
Just one more answer to Diane, just really fast.
Mhm.
Check with your insurance agent, if you have an insurance agent, because they will tell you what you need and don't need. So, we do keep ours, we keep it updated. I email every month those who are not updated. But your insurance agent should be able to tell you those types of things.
Great. The person identified as Diane Smith.
Okay, yeah, I'm actually her husband, George. We're in Wingate Village up in Maryland. And one thing I had been contemplating to try to get wider engagement from our volunteer base was simply crafting a letter that would not be heavy-handed to all of our volunteers, just to remind them that the strength of having a volunteer corps is the ability to spread the assistance burden, if you will, more widely. But in our village, and I gather it's happening in a lot of other villages, that's really not happening. And I think in part because there might be a perception that because our assistance requests are being filled, that there's no need to start volunteering if you haven't. When the fact of the matter is most of the requests are being satisfied by a handful of volunteers. So I'm wondering whether any other village has taken that somewhat direct approach to clarifying the issue with volunteers, or has considered it and maybe ruled it out or whatever.
Well, I can say that I'm inspired by that approach. I like it. We've been talking a lot about at AMV, like a few of you have mentioned, about the need to go through our list and really clean it out. Like, who's still interested here? Who's really gonna be a driver? Like, we need to clean up those lists. And I love your idea because I think that could be a nice precursor to cleaning out that list. Say like, here's the situation. Like you said, like a village, we all we're stronger relying on each other and being able to fill each other's gaps, and put that at the beginning, and then like go in for the follow-up and start really kind of cleaning things out. But I think that's a great idea, just put it out there and be like kind but honest and clear. I know that for AMV, we tout one of the great things about our program is that it is so flexible. Like, you aren't required to spend a minimum amount of time per month or anything. But like I said, I think that can also backfire. And like you mentioned, the requests do get filled. So it might not feel like there is such a need. So I like how upfront that is. And I am very intrigued by that approach. So I'm going to put that on my list, and I'd love to hear how it goes for you.
Okay, thanks.
Any other reactions to that suggestion or thoughts? If not, I know we're running out of time, Mary Jo. So I see Marion has her hand raised.
I'm from Wingate and Maplewood. We're one village, neighbors helping neighbors. And this is more of a question. Several of you have referred to your members. We don't have official members. We consider every household in our two communities, which is over 2,000 households, to be members or potential members. We would provide services or social activities to any of them. So how are you defining members? Because one of our problems is recruiting volunteers. And I don't mean just volunteers to provide services, but I mean volunteers to actively participate in the leadership and the social activities and all the other many events, which mostly are done by just a handful of people. So what do people mean when they say members?
We need people to make sure we have their emergency contact. And, there's certain steps we take to make sure anyone we're providing a service to is someone who we are capable of giving a service to. And we have a contract social worker who usually checks in and assesses if this is somebody who's likely to be able to be safely helped. So that's the big factor.
And
For
for
us,
us,
it's-
Marianne,
it's-
it's very, oh, sorry, Bill.
No, go ahead. Donna.
Ours is very clear cut. Who is a member? We have a membership fee and people need to fill out an application to join. Like Shelley mentioned, we go and we meet with them to make sure that AMV is the right fit for them. So our membership is very formalized, but I know it differs widely throughout villages. But
Yeah, I think this is where, if you've seen one village, you've seen one village. And I think people are struggling with it all the time. And the membership fees for villages, there's a huge range in those fees. So,
We don't have members and we don't charge anything, but we do have a process where they sign up with us and have a witness. They look over our form and fill it in and sign it and have a witness so that we do know that they've signed up with us and that they know that we're a nonprofit. So we just don't call them members and we don't charge anything. Also, I'd like to mention, I had to go off the call for a minute, but I don't know if anyone said this, but our insurance company has a special arrangement with the people that do our background checks. So we pay less when we go through them than we would if we just went out and picked somebody.
that's interesting.
And I think we only, Mary, can you say how much do we pay? It's $10 or $15, I think.
For the background checks, you mean?
Yes, there's more if there's a DMV check,
Right.
but I think it's closer to 10 or 15 with the one that our insurance company suggests.
That's great. Thanks. Susan of NCC Connection.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to the question about membership. This is, we're North Chevy Chase Connections, and we have two, I don't want to call them levels or categories. One is paid members, and our membership dues are very low. And those are the people that pay for membership because either they want to support the organization or they want rides. The only services that we require membership for are rides. The other category is what we call neighbors, people who live within our boundaries, who want to be part of the organization, don't necessarily have to join to be a paid member, but they can come to any of our social events. They can get other kinds of services, and hopefully we're optimistic that once they do get involved with us that way, they will become paid members. So we have neighbors who are part of our village and within our boundaries, and then we have paid members who are eligible for rides. Those are our two kind of categories.
Do you have an age point?
We are multi-generational. So we have families with young kids, we have seniors, we encompass the entire gambit. And we offer our events and, our events and our social activities. We have a kids and family group. They do events for the kids. We have sometimes, I would say that's the only thing that differentiates our neighbors is there are kids and family events, and then there are events for everyone else. When we do our social before COVID, we did our evening social at the Audubon Wood End Mansion. And because we were serving alcohol, we limited it to adults. Kids were not eligible to come. But no, we don't really have an age limit or age restriction for anything.
Great. Okay, let's see if we can get Bonnie Swerdlow's comments in here, Mary Jo, do you think?
I think so. Go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to ask Noelle about the volunteer match websites that she used to get more volunteers from. What was it called? Volunteermatch.com?
it's Volunteer Match. I think it might be .org, but it is Volunteer Match if you Google that. And then
Okay.
we
And
have
there
in
was another
Arlington.
one?
It's Volunteer Arlington, which is
Oh,
obviously
okay.
specific
A
to
local
Arlington,
one.
but your
Right.
county might have their own volunteer
Okay.
website.
So I'll just search. Thank you.
I want to point out that if you've looked in the chat, you'll see that Shelley put her training slides a link to the training slides there that you can download. Thank you for that, Shelley. It's, I'll be looking for those. But I bet we're ready to turn it back over to you, Mary Jo.
Well, thank you very much. I think that this has been a very rich discussion and remarkably well, a broad participation. I thought we had as many solutions as we had questions, which is the way we want it to be. This is the last of our Zoom sessions for this calendar year. We don't have a schedule for the ones coming up, but we already know that there is interest in the other aspects of the volunteer issues that we've touched on today. We do know that there's interest in the recruiting and sustaining members. And we know their interest in other topics like board leadership and the transitions of leadership, regardless of the structure. So we're going to be working on a calendar of Zoom programs for next year. Our first, let me see quickly if I can find it, our first quarterly meeting, for which we don't have a speaker yet, will be, tell me, Carolyn, is it the 18th of January? I believe it's the 18th, but I hope you're all on our listserv so that you'll get a notice of that. Again, some of you know that at those meetings that there's always a plenary speaker, and then there's 3 breakout sessions. So again, I hope you'll look forward to that. And just email wavevillages.org, now WashingtonAreaVillages.org, if you are not on our mailing list and would like to be on, WashingtonAreaVillages.org. And with that, I'll say thank you to our co-presenters and thanks to all. It's been a really great afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to see you all.
Be well.
Bye-bye.
Have a